Baseball stadiums and their unique designs have always been a part of the whole love affair, dating back to its early days, with different dimensions, designs, and artifacts that evoke a sense of nostalgia with new technologies. But for a while, baseball went away with that, with what are described as cookie-cutter multi-purpose stadiums. Though they still had their benefits, they didn't have the same appeal and effect. That is until Baltimore's Camden Yards came along in 1992 and changed things completely. So let's look at how Camden Yards changed stadiums forever.
Totally sports-esque. Majorly.
The uniqueness of baseball comes from seeing something different in every major league park you go to, aside from just the team colors and all that jazz. And it really goes back to the beginning. Really, the only thing set standard in baseball is the bases being 90 feet apart and the mound being 60 feet 6 inches away. The rest is up for the teams to decide. The first steel and concrete park opening in 1909 was Shibe Park in Philadelphia, built out of a necessity for the demand, with the Philadelphia Athletics having to turn away as many as 20,000 people from Columbia Park who wanted to come out and watch Connie Mack's team. And numerous historic stadiums began popping up throughout the country, with 1912 seeing Wrigley Field in Cincinnati, Tiger Stadium in Detroit, and Fenway Park in Boston, which still stands, with other fields like Forbes Field, Comiskey Park, the Polo Grounds, Crosley Field, Ebbets Field, Sportsman's Park, Yankee Stadium, and Wrigley Field, which also still stands, popping up by 1923. These parks usually had steel, rather than concrete trusses, an arched brick facade, a sunroof over the gentle slope of the upper deck, an asymmetrical playing field, and natural grass turf. And these parks were usually rested within the urban neighborhoods they embellished, being within walking distance of train stations, local businesses, and homes. They were often privately owned, but gave a sense of the community and became a defining element of the cities. These classic parks metaphorically fit the ideal of many Americans' commitment to the city in the time. But coming out of World War II, there was a shift in American culture, and stadium building went along with it. The term behind it being suburbanization, the population shifting from the cities or rural areas into the suburbs. With economic expansion in the country, a sudden housing boom emerged to address housing shortages in the country, and these new cost-efficient neighborhoods filled quick, and new stadiums followed. These new stadiums began popping up in the 1960s and were known as multi-purpose stadiums. They were usually built near highways and had large parking lots without a connection to public transit, able to become reality as less relied on public transportation. And pretty obvious why they were called multi-purpose stadiums, and that both baseball and football could be played there, along with other events. In a sense, these already existed as many football games were already being played in baseball stadiums, especially in the early days, such as the Bears at Wrigley, the Chicago Cardinals at Comiskey Park, the New York Giants and Jets at the Polo Grounds, the Detroit Lions at Tiger Stadium, and many more. And some baseball stadiums still host football games. And with baseball and football having very different dimensions and facilities, these new stadiums are often oval-shaped. The benefits of the multi-purpose stadiums being the cost saving, with public funds often being used for the stadiums. In this sense, one piece of real estate allows the money to be spent on infrastructure for just one stadium instead of multiple, and these stadiums had pretty similar designs. They featured the oval design and could accommodate football and baseball by rotating sections of the boxy areas to fit the respective playing fields. Arrangements better made for football, and later developed from the most famous of these types in the Astrodome. They almost all use AstroTurf or artificial grass. Many of these stadiums were domed, and of course natural grass couldn't grow or they were in cold cities. And before hybrid grass and improved cultivation, AstroTurf was the best solution. Really the first of these stadiums was RFK Memorial Stadium in Washington, D.C., opened in 1961, and they would pop up everywhere over the next 2 decades. Shea Stadium was built in 1964, Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, and the iconic Astrodome in 1965, Bush Memorial Stadium, and the Oakland Coliseum in 1966, San Diego Stadium in 1967, Riverfront Stadium and Three Rivers Stadium in 1970, Veterans Stadium in 1971, and the Kingdome in 1976. There were a few baseball-only stadiums built in this time as well, such as Candlestick Park in 1960, Dodger Stadium in 1962, Angel Stadium in 1966, though there were some orientations for a future football franchise, that later being the Rams, and Royal Stadium, now Kauffman Stadium in 1973. A part of the Truman Sports Complex including Arrowhead Stadium that laid down a path for future purpose-built stadiums. And just looking at those 11 stadiums, they all have similar looks. And for that reason, they were referred to as cookie-cutter stadiums. While there were the economic benefits, louder crowds because of more seats, and great memories for many people who spent their time in these stadiums, they began to fall out of favor by the late 1980s. The real last of these types to be built was the Sky Dome in Toronto in 1989. Also designed different to field a Canadian football team with different dimensions, along with the Toronto Raptors for their first 4 seasons. But the year before that, Pilot Field, now known as Salem Field, opened in Buffalo, New York. The venue was created in hoping to lure an expansion franchise of Buffalo that never came to be, though they later hosted the Toronto Blue Jays in 2021. But it's home to the AAA Buffalo Bisons in the Blue Jays organization with 16,000 seats, the highest capacity of any AAA ballpark in the United States. And it was designed by HOK Sports as the first retro classic ballpark in the world. And upon its opening, that saw a record 1.18 million fans show up over the year, the park was highly acclaimed, mainly for its embracement of more classic ballparks. Eric Brazil saying, "It just may be baseball's prototype for the 1990s and beyond." And he was right. After pioneering retro parks, HOK Sports moved up to the majors as the Baltimore Orioles tasked them to design a new park. A big reason this came to be is in 1984, after Baltimore, Maryland officials refused to commit money for a replacement to Memorial Stadium, a multi-purpose stadium where the Orioles, who moved from St. Louis, played since 1954. The Baltimore Colts, who also played there, would then move to Indianapolis. And with fears that the Orioles would move next, city and state leaders began planning a new park to keep them in Baltimore. The original design created by HOK Sports was similar to the new Comiskey Park, now called Wrigley Field, but team president Larry Lucchino turned it down, saying he wanted an old-fashioned park with modern features. Janet Marie Smith was the architect and city planner hired to execute the vision, while Ashton Design created signs, graphics, and logos for the stadium, along with a 19th century style clock, designs that worked so well that they were also hired to complete similar retro redesigns for Fenway Park and Dodger Stadium. There were debates over if the stadium should be called Oriole Park or Camden Yards, and a compromise was made for it to be named Oriole Park at Camden Yards, which no one really says. But Oriole Park at Camden Yards began construction in 1989 and would last for 33 months, costing $110 million or $246 million in the current day. The park was built on land that was once a rail yard for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Camden Station, with much of the view being dominated by the B&O warehouse, which was completed in 1905. A clear ode to the past, they really became the park's defining feature that has never been hit by a home run in a game, though Ken Griffey Jr. would in the home run derby. The bullpen area was designed through write-in designs by the public, with the two-tier designs the first in Major League parks, with picnic areas above the bullpen, while sculptures of Oriole greats were unveiled, along with a later one of Babe Ruth, who was born just 2 blocks away. It also featured an outfield wall of straight wall segments, the first park to do that since Ebbets Field. The asymmetrical park, with a traditional feel and modern features, fit 48,000 people in its first year, and fans would fill the seats every night to start, as the park was welcomed to huge praise. The park immediately became a civic monument. In the final year at Memorial Stadium, 2.5 million tickets were sold. In Camden Yards' first year, it beat that by 1 million. While the Orioles were competitive, and of course had Cal Ripken Jr. playing every game, the real star that brought the fans out was the stadium. Nestor Aparicio said, "It was like Disney World when that stadium opened in downtown." The then mayor, Kurt Schmoke, even said it renewed people's faith in their government, recalling the fans saying that he was glad the government could finally do something right. Maybe an overreaction, but the ballpark seemed to immediately start gaining a mythical tale to it, and a part of that came from the influence it would have. With Camden Yards averaging over 43,000 fans over the next 10 years, other teams started following suit and creating traditional feeling asymmetrical ballparks with modern features downtown, being dubbed retro classic parks or retro modern parks that had retro exteriors and interiors that were more modern. 21 ballparks would adopt the retro classic or retro modern look in the coming years, with the White Sox and Angels renovating their field to fit the design. Examples of the retro classic include Crosley Field, Oracle Park, and often the most acclaimed park in PNC Park, while fields like T-Mobile Park, Daikin Park, Petco Park, and more use the more retro modern look, with HOK Sports designing 14 of these fields. This is the reason Camden Yards is heralded, even trademarking the phrase, "the ballpark that forever changed baseball." But really, it changed all American sports. Put simply, the biggest change came from the fact that teams and cities saw the possibility of sole-purpose stadiums. 8 of those 11 multi-purpose stadiums from the 60s and 70s have since been demolished, while the Astrodome and RFK Stadium are vacant. And the Oakland Coliseum really made it the farthest. The Oakland Raiders played there with the A's until 2020, when they would move to Las Vegas, with the A's playing their last season there in 2024, as they currently play in Sacramento and plan to also leave for Las Vegas, so fans and other teams have something to do on vacation after gambling all their money away. There are 10 NBA and NHL teams that share arenas, but with the similar dimensions, it's not as much of a hassle compared to a football/baseball stadium. Just like a few MLS teams play in NFL stadiums, with the dimensions not needing a massive change. But while Camden Yards has led to a rebirth in beautiful stadiums across sports, there of course are some drawbacks, that mainly being the cost. Camden Yards in itself came about through a bit of the usual blackmail owners always use, which is threatening to leave, which is exactly what the Colts did, and the possibility of Baltimore having no teams was not something lawmakers wanted, and it cost taxpayers. and has continued to be seen as just usual business. Since Camden Yards opened, more than 100 new stadiums have been built, often in city centers, and often publicly funded for the most part, and according to J.C. Bradbury, more than $19 billion has been spent by local governments to fund stadiums nationwide, and the value could very well be higher, and it doesn't always lead to great economic benefit. In the decade since, some cities like Sacramento and Columbus have seen economic benefits by importing benefits from areas outside city limits, sometimes raising property value and encouraging economic activity year-round, but that success isn't common. And of course, it can't be all blamed on the stadium. But it's not surprising that as more people have learned about the backstory of these funded stadiums that have hundreds of millions of dollars poured into them, the less support they have received, even from die-hard fans. But such stadiums in the public view can also be seen as warranted for social and cultural reasons, in the same way the public may look at a library, or a park, or a museum, in that it brings people together and creates a sense of community in a way that is hard to measure. As Mayor Schmoke said regarding Camden Yards, we didn't go into it thinking that this was going to be a major moneymaker for the city. It's the unfortunate part of it all, and obviously isn't all blamed on Camden Yards because they didn't create the hustle. But for the sports world, Camden Yards' real impact is ushering in a new era of stadiums with more identity and soul, utilizing the best parts of what made the ballparks of old so great while adding a modern feel, pretty much a metaphor for baseball itself. And as 30-year increments are seen by economists as when new waves of construction begin, there may be a new era of stadiums coming, possibly for the better or for the worse. Though not exactly brand new, Lone Depot Park is seen as the first example of contemporary architecture in MLB. That park also being designed by HOK Sports, who was waiting for a client that was willing to break the mold, that other stadiums across the world are now using. The problem for the Marlins being, not too many come to the 21st Century Stadium, though it is hard to blame them too much, with a front office that doesn't really care. So it will be interesting to see where sports stadiums go from here, both in the construction, architecture, and the funding. But like a Fenway or a Wrigley, Camden Yards is a park that can be seen as changing everything and becoming the park that other parks wanted to be, with a real identity unique to its area, where you could watch a game with the skyline in the distance, while two drunk fans behind you start throwing hands.
Enough! I thought this was America! Huh? Isn't this America? I'm sorry, I thought this was America!
Hopefully you liked this video, and if so, please consider liking and subscribing for new videos every week. Thank you.